September 1st, 1939. The world teeters on the edge as a single act ignites a firestorm. Germany's invasion of Poland, the opening move in a conflict that would consume over 100 million lives, marked the beginning of a war whose roots ran deeper than many realize. How did shattered economies and political resentments after World War I produce a cataclysm that redrew borders, toppled empires, and triggered horrors on a scale never seen before? To understand the scope and stakes of what truly shaped our modern era, we must go back to the uneasy peace and the volatile grievances that set it all in motion. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, left Germany with deep wounds, stripped of 13% of its territory, forced to accept blame for the war, and burdened with crippling reparations. The loss of land meant millions of Germans found themselves living outside their own country's new borders. At home, the economy spiraled out of control. By 1923, inflation soared to 300% each month, wiping out savings and fueling despair. In the streets, money lost its meaning as prices doubled between paychecks. This climate of hardship and humiliation bred anger and a longing for strong leadership. In Italy, Benito Mussolini seized power in 1922, promising to restore national pride through his fascist movement. His march on Rome showed how quickly democracy could give way to authoritarian rule. Across the Mediterranean, Japan set its sights on empire, invading Manchuria in 1931 and signaling a new era of military expansion. Germany, too, became fertile ground for radical ideas. Political violence and economic collapse paved the way for extremist parties. The Nazi Party gained traction by vowing to overturn Versailles and reclaim lost glory. In 1933, Adolf Hitler became chancellor, harnessing resentment and fear to build a totalitarian state. The world watched as democratic governments struggled and aggressive doctrines took hold in Europe and Asia. The uneasy peace of the 1920s and the 1930s was cracking, setting the stage for confrontation on a scale the world had never seen. At dawn on September 1st, 1939, German tanks and troops surged across the Polish border, launching a new form of warfare the world had never seen. The assault combined speed and surprise and overwhelming firepower. Armored columns cut deep into Polish territory, while dive bombers shattered rail lines and terrified civilians. In the chaos, communication broke down and resistance crumbled. Within days, Polish defenses were split and encircled. On September 3rd, 1939, as reports of burning villages and fleeing refugees reached London and Paris, Britain and France declared war on Germany. But their armies remained behind their own borders, unprepared for the pace of the attack. The campaign moved with relentless urgency. German forces advanced nearly 200 miles in the first week. Warsaw endured relentless bombing, its streets choked with rubble and panic. Polish commanders, outmaneuvered and outgunned, struggled to regroup. On September 17th, 1939, a new blow landed. Soviet troops crossed into eastern Poland, sealing the country's fate under a secret pact with Berlin. By late September, the Polish capital surrendered. In just over 5 weeks, Poland ceased to exist as an independent nation. The world watched in shock as the map of Europe began to change overnight. For millions, the war was no longer a distant threat. It had arrived with a force that would reshape everything. German armored divisions swept through the Ardennes in May 1940, bypassing France's heavily fortified Maginot Line. French and British units, caught off guard by the speed and direction of the assault, found themselves surrounded and cut off from the south. Within weeks, German forces pushed to the English Channel, trapping over 300,000 Allied soldiers near the port of Dunkirk. Facing annihilation, a desperate evacuation began. From May 26th to June 4th, an improvised armada of over 800 vessels including Navy destroyers, fishing boats, and civilian yachts, braved mines and constant air attack. In just 9 days, more than 338,000 troops escaped across the Channel, leaving behind nearly all their heavy equipment. The beaches were littered with wreckage and abandoned gear, but the core of the British Army survived. France capitulated on June 22nd. Paris fell under occupation, and the swastika flew over the Eiffel Tower. Britain now stood alone against the Nazi war machine. The new Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, addressed the nation with a promise to fight on, his words echoing through radios and bomb shelters alike. In the summer of 1940, the Luftwaffe launched a relentless air campaign against Britain, aiming to destroy the Royal Air Force and break civilian morale. Night after night, bombs rained down on London and other cities. Over 1 million homes were damaged or destroyed, and more than 43,000 civilians lost their lives during the Blitz. Yet Britain refused to yield. The Royal Air Force, bolstered by a new network of radar stations and sector control rooms, tracked incoming raids and scrambled fighters with unprecedented speed. Ordinary citizens endured blackout nights and the wail of air raid sirens, sheltering underground as their cities burned above. The battle for Britain was fought not only in the skies, but in the resolve of a people determined to endure. For now, the island held firm, the last bastion against a continent under occupation. In June 1941, 3 million Axis soldiers surged across the Soviet border, launching Operation Barbarossa. German, Romanian, and Finnish forces advanced along a front stretching nearly 2,000 miles. The Wehrmacht rolled forward in 3 massive groups, aiming for Leningrad in the north, Moscow in the center, and the rich farmlands of Ukraine to the south. Initial victories came quickly. Entire Soviet armies were surrounded and captured. But as summer turned to autumn, the supply lines buckled. Railways clogged with broken equipment, and fuel shortages slowed the advance. By December 1941, German troops found themselves stalled just miles from Moscow, facing temperatures that plunged below -30 degrees Celsius. Engines froze, weapons jammed, and soldiers wrapped themselves in scavenged rags. The Red Army, battered but unbroken, launched a fierce counterattack, pushing the invaders back from the capital. Half a world away, another front erupted. On December 7, 1941, Japanese bombers struck the US naval base at Pearl Harbor, sinking 8 battleships and killing 2,403 Americans. The next day, President Franklin Roosevelt addressed Congress, calling December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States declared war on Japan, and within days, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. American factories shifted overnight to wartime production. Aircraft, tanks, and ships rolled out at a pace the world had never seen. Across the Pacific, Japanese forces swept through Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, threatening Australia and India. In Berlin and Tokyo, leaders believed their enemies would be too slow, too divided to respond. Instead, the war now spanned every continent and ocean, with new alliances and new stakes. From the snows outside Moscow to the burning docks of Honolulu, the conflict had become truly global. In the late autumn of 1942, the city of Stalingrad became a graveyard of hope for the German Sixth Army. Soviet forces, under the direction of General Zhukov, and with Stalin watching from Moscow, launched Operation Uranus on November the 19th. Within days, more than 300,000 Axis soldiers, including Germans, Romanians, and Italians, were surrounded in a frozen pocket stretching nearly 30 miles across the city's shattered outskirts. The encirclement was complete by November 23rd. Inside the ring, chaos and hunger took hold. Temperatures dropped below -20 degrees Celsius. Food and ammunition ran low. Wounded men froze in makeshift shelters. Civilians, trapped in basements and cellars, scavenged for scraps among the ruins. Letters home spoke of gnawing hunger and despair. Outside, Soviet artillery sounded the shrinking perimeter day and night. Relief efforts failed. By January, Disease and starvation claimed more lives than bullets. Entire units surrendered for a crust of bread. On February 2nd, 1943, the last German resistance collapsed. Of the hundreds of thousands trapped, only a fraction would ever return home. The battle left Stalingrad in ruins and turned the momentum of the war. The Red Army, once battered and retreating, now pressed the offensive. The Eastern Front would never be the same. In early June 1942, the Pacific War reached a critical crossroads. Japanese Admiral Yamamoto ordered a powerful carrier strike force toward Midway Atoll, aiming to finish off the United States Pacific Fleet. But deep inside a windowless basement at Pearl Harbor, American codebreakers, led by Commander Joseph Rochefort, had already cracked key portions of the JN-25 naval code. Their intercepts revealed the target, code AF, Midway. Admiral Chester Nimitz moved his carriers into position, gambling on intelligence rather than numbers. As dawn broke on June 4, 1942, American planes caught the Japanese fleet by surprise. In a matter of hours, 3 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, were engulfed in flames. Hiryu, the 4th carrier, was lost by nightfall. 4 Japanese carriers were lost, over 300 aircraft destroyed, and thousands of sailors gone. The Imperial Japanese Navy, once seen as unstoppable, suffered a blow it would never recover from. For the first time in the war, the Allies seized the initiative in the Pacific. The tide had turned, not just through firepower, but through the silent work of codebreakers who read the enemy's plans before a single shot was fired. In the deserts of North Africa, supply lines became the true front lines. By the autumn of 1942, the fate of entire armies rested not just on strategy, but on fuel, food, and ammunition. The British 8th Army, now under Bernard Montgomery, prepared for a major assault at El Alamein, west of Alexandria. Across the sand, Erwin Rommel's Panzer Army Africa faced a different battle. Axis convoys, harried by Allied aircraft and submarines, struggled to deliver enough fuel from Italy to the front. At times, Rommel's tanks could move only a few miles before running dry. Railways in Libya, already stretched thin, could not keep up with demand. On October 23, 1942, Montgomery launched his offensive. Allied troops advanced behind a rolling artillery barrage, their movements guided by detailed logistics planning. Fresh supplies arrived daily by sea, and a reliable rail network carried fuel, shells, and rations to the front. The contrast could not have been sharper. Axis units, short on fuel and ammunition, fell back as Allied armor pressed forward. By early November, Rommel ordered a withdrawal. The retreat became a rout, with thousands of Axis soldiers captured or left behind. El Alamein was not just a victory of arms, but of supply. With North Africa slipping from Axis control, the Mediterranean soon opened to Allied shipping, setting the stage for the next phase of the war. Before dawn on June 6, 1944, Allied ships filled the English Channel, carrying more than 160,000 troops toward the coast of Normandy. The plan, led by General Dwight D. Eisenhower, depended on precision and secrecy. Months of preparation had gone into choosing the landing sites: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, and Sword Beaches, each assigned to British, American, and Canadian forces. The scale was staggering. Over 7,000 vessels, 10,000 aircraft, and thousands of tons of equipment surged toward France in a single night. But the operation's true advantage lay in deception. Under Operation Bodyguard, Allied intelligence wove a web of false signals, phantom armies, and double agents. The most famous, known as Garbo, convinced German commanders that the real invasion would come at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. Dummy tanks and fake radio chatter reinforced the illusion, holding back German reserves while the real assault began. As the first waves hit the beaches, fierce resistance met them, especially at Omaha, where cliffs and machine gun nests turned the sand red. Yet by nightfall, Allied troops had carved out a fragile foothold. The door to Western Europe stood open, and the race to liberate the continent had begun. Soviet artillery pounded Berlin as April 1945 drew to a close. Red Army troops fought block by block, pushing deeper into the ruined city. Streets once lined with shops and apartments became battlefields, choked with rubble and the wreckage of tanks. Civilians hid in cellars, waiting for the shelling to end. On April the 21st, Soviet soldiers entered the city limits, meeting fierce resistance from German defenders, many of them old men and boys pressed into last-ditch service. In the heart of Berlin, a concrete bunker became the center of a collapsing regime. On April the 30th, as Soviet forces closed in on the Reich Chancellery, Adolf Hitler took his own life underground. His death left a vacuum at the top, and with it, the last threads of Nazi command unraveled. Fighting continued for days, but the outcome was clear. The Red Army raised its flag over the Reichstag, signaling the defeat of Nazi Germany. In the aftermath, more than 1 million soldiers and civilians lay dead or wounded. The surrender negotiations began almost immediately, and within a week, Germany's unconditional surrender ended the war in Europe. The guns fell silent, but the scars of Berlin's last hours would linger for generations. On August 6, 1945, a single B-29 bomber named Enola Gay released its payload over Hiroshima. In an instant, the heart of the city vanished beneath a blinding flash and a rising column of smoke. More than 90,000 men, women, and children died within moments, some vaporized, others burned or crushed as buildings collapsed. Survivors wandered a landscape of ash, their shadows burned into stone. 3 days later, a second atomic bomb struck Nagasaki. The blast killed at least 40,000 people immediately, with tens of thousands more succumbing to burns and radiation in the days that followed. The devastation reached beyond imagination. Charred ruins, rivers clogged with the dead, hospitals overwhelmed by the wounded. President Truman, who had authorized the attacks, faced a decision that would haunt the world for generations. Japan's leaders, stunned by the scale of destruction and faced with Soviet armies sweeping through Manchuria, accepted the terms of surrender. On August the 15th, Emperor Hirohito's voice crackled over the radio, urging his people to endure the unendurable. The war, at last, was over. Today, the scars of World War II still shape borders, alliances, and global institutions. As new conflicts echo old divisions, the lessons paid for by over 70 million lives remain urgent. Democracy, peace, and truth are never permanent. They are choices renewed by each generation. The world's future depends on remembering what happens when those choices fail. What would we do differently if the cost were ours to bear?